right, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are standing on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, and that we do have one late item for approval. It's to do with the liquor license review for the Blackfin Pub. So we need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And adoption of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank you. So we have two delegations. We have Angela Fletcher, who's with the Coalition To End Homelessness. Hi, Angela. She'll be speaking to us on Zoom and has a presentation. So I'll give you 10 minutes, Angela, and then there'll be questions afterwards. So take it away.
Hear me.
Don't hear you. There we go.
Just going to give me a second to share my screen. Thank you. And can you see it? Can you see my screen? Okay, great. Thank you for having me today. My name is Angela Fletcher, and I am the coordinator for the Coalition To End Homelessness. I'm here today to request the Town of Comox's annual contribution to an affordable housing project. The request coincides with the Comox Valley Regional District's Homeless Support Service contribution, for which the Coalition makes recommendations. The Coalition announced the recommendations to the CVRD at last week's board meeting. But before, oh, sorry, 1 second here. Before I get started on the recommendations, I'm just going to give you a little update. Currently, the Coalition has 37 member agencies. 5 member agencies joined in 2021, and they included the Pride Society, Sunday Station, Hornby Island Housing Society, the Unhoused Society, and St. Vincent de Paul. So together, the 37 agencies and advisors coordinate, recommend, plan, advocate for, and implement community responses to homelessness and increasing affordable housing. The Coalition works within a wheelhouse of housing options, right through emergency shelter to affordable ownership models. So just taking a quick look here at what currently exists and what we're working towards. We had some fantastic highlights in 2021. We saw the opening of Sanderson Place, which is a Habitat for Humanity project, and that is on Lake Trail Road. We saw the approval of Cypress Gardens, of course, in Comox. We also saw the approval of Wache's development on McPhee. We saw plans and supports begin for Rainbow House, which is a Comox First Nations and Dawn to Dawn initiative. We saw the approval of some more transitional housing, which will be called Dairy's Place. And of course, that is through the Comox Valley Transition Society. And we also saw Dawn to Dawn acquire 1 unit in Comox. So just taking a look at that a little differently, here is the units obtained and secured in 2021. So we can see that we have another 149 units. Which is fantastic. There is a recommendation process that happens before we come to see you at council. First of all, anybody that is interested in funding each year through the Homeless Support Service and also through Town of Comox, they have to be member agencies of the Coalition. If they have a project going and would like to submit an expression of interest, there is a time frame for that. It usually happens in December. At that time, a review committee is established. It's established through the Coalition leadership team. This year, the review committee consisted of a couple people from the leadership team, as well as other members from member agencies. The review committee takes a look at the expressions of interest and at the funding that is available to be allocated. And they make those recommendations and they bring that forward to the Coalition leadership team. The Coalition leadership team then assesses for any extra questions or things that need to be known And then those recommendations are brought forward to the entire coalition in our monthly coalition meeting. And that's where we have a vote. And all of the coalition, it's all on consensus. From there, those recommendations are brought forward to the CVRD, and that's what I did last week. And now I'm here presenting to Comox. So this year, we had 3 funding applicants. We saw an application from Habitat for Humanity for $50,000 for construction of 12 townhomes for families, and that project is on Piercy Avenue. We saw an expression of interest from Wache for the construction of their 40 suite and 1-bedroom units for elders and low-income seniors. We also saw a $75,000 request for a drop-in warming center, much like Connect or for Connect. So we took those recommendations forward to the CVRD. And the CVRD took a look at our recommendations. We recommended to the CVRD that Habitat for Humanity receive $10,000. We recommended that the Wache project receive the $115,000 and that the drop-in centers receive $75,000. So through the CVRD, we had $200,000 to allocate. And so those are the decisions that were made. And therefore, that leaves Comox, of course. And we are requesting that Comox contribute $40,000 to the Habitat for Humanity's request, which of course total was $50,000. So $40,000 from Comox and $10,000 from the CVRD. Now, with the help of volunteers and generous donors, Habitat for Humanity builds decent and affordable homes that provide a solid foundation for local families to build better and healthier lives. Habitat homeowners volunteer up to 500 hours and pay an affordable mortgage geared to their income to buy their home. The affordable mortgage payments go into a revolving fund that allows Habitat for Humanity to build more homes and provide more people with affordable home ownership opportunities. So the goal for Habitat for Humanity for this year with this funding would be to pour the foundations for those 12 townhomes, and they expect to bring 4 units into occupancy this year. Adding up all of the affordable housing that's been built and secured since 2015, including that 149 from this year, is looking at 299, which is absolutely fantastic, and happy to keep working towards more. And what's been really great about this whole process, about allowing the coalition to make recommendations, is that every dollar that has been contributed through the HSS process, which includes this process with the town of Comox, has brought in $19 additional dollars in additional investments from other sources. So that's fantastic. Keeping it short and sweet for you today. Thank you very much for your time. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Angela. Do we have any questions from council? I have a comment. So just at the end there, that was interesting. So $1 equals leveraging 19 additional dollars. How is that, through grant money? Where's that 19 other dollars come from?
It is. It's through other grant streams. So there was a review done on the HSS service in 2020, and consultants were hired, and they found that an additional $19 was came through other funding sources. And I see Roger has his hand up, and he probably has more information. So I'll let him take over there.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Yeah.
I think Roger Kishi they're looking at here. I see Ken Grant looking behind him. He's not behind you, Ken.
Yeah. I'm virtual.
Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
So I'm here as a member of the leadership team of the Coalition To End Homelessness, and so that stat came out of the review process of the HSS that the regional district did about 18 months ago. That stat came out of it, and the regional district is still in the process of looking at how some of the recommendations from that review could be implemented, and it's still an ongoing process. But the example of where that funding comes from, I can give the example of a project that we have on the go at the Wache Friendship Center, is we accessed seed funding from CMHC, from Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. We have accessed money through HSS. We have also accessed money through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Green Municipal Fund, to help us in doing energy planning for our building. And that could lead into further funding from FCM on capital parts of the project to increase the energy efficiency for our building. We've also received, or we've been approved through this the Community Housing Fund through BC Housing, and we've received project development funds from them up to now, and we're still in the negotiations for the final capital amounts from that, and we will be applying to CMHC as well for their co-investment fund. So it takes a lot of work and bringing together different funding partners to make a project work. Unfortunately, we can't just go to one place and find all the funding. And even in the end, with our project, at the end of the construction period, and when we start moving tenants in, Wache will still have a mortgage that will have to be paid, but part of that is part of the funding process through BC Housing too, of how the affordability of the housing can be maintained.
Okay, that's a good start. Thank you, Councillor Minions.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment, and it's really nice to see the momentum that the leadership team and the coalition is getting. I think it was at about 140 units last year, which looks like close to half of what's happened in the last 6 or 7 years. So to see that really growing, building momentum is really great to see. And I know the last couple years, Comox has been asked to support Habitat for Humanity, and just learning about it, because that's where we've been a part of. It's a really cool model as far as the joint ownership and the securing of housing. So personally, I really like to see that being supported. And I know a family that got to move into the housing a couple of years ago, and in the future projects, and they're Comox families. So even though they may not be in the town of Comox, I think it's a really good serving regional group. So thank you so much for the work you did. And I'm just curious, Angela, are you replacing Andrea Kelly in the role there? Okay, yes. Welcome. Thank you.
Andrea ended being the coordinator in June of last year, I believe, right, Roger? And I started in August, yes.
Great, thank you. Just putting kind of faces. Thanks, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments.
Thanks. Do we have any further questions? Seeing none, Angela and Roger, thank you very much for your presentation. Great information, and we will move on. And so there's no need, if you don't want to stay on there, we would just rather you go onto the Zoom, the YouTube channel, and save the bandwidth and stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so we have Cleo Tetro and Holly Brotherson of Love Local Food. They have a presentation for us, and council should have received that by email the other day. So ladies, you have your 10 minutes.
Very short. Okay. Hi, thank you so much for having us tonight. We're Love Local Food Co. I'm Cleo Tetro, and this is Holly Brotherston. I'm sure you guys have all read this already, but I'm just going to give a quick overview of who we are and why we're here today. So our company started in 2020. We actually started by delivering food to people's doorsteps, all from local sources. So we went directly to the farms, collected their goods that were going to waste during COVID, and we actually brought them to people's doorsteps. And we worked with about 23 different providers during that time. Last year, we expanded that program to offer a partnership with Portside Produce, and we had a pickup location on their land here, I guess the space he's renting. So we worked with him there. And then this year, our goal is to start a Comox market on Thursday evenings. And I'm going to explain a little bit more of the vision of that market and what brings us here today. So we were looking to create an opportunity for growers, small businesses, and artisans to have a central location to grow their businesses and to thrive in the Comox Valley. We feel Comox is a really great space for that because there hasn't been a market like this here. There isn't really anything that meets all of these areas right now in the Comox Valley at all. So this would be unique to Comox, and the growth of this community seems to be a great space for that. We think the vibrancy after a couple of years of very much, minuscule times for everyone, it hasn't been a great time to be able to really enjoy the heart of our community. So this would bring people into a gathering space in a safe way in an open air market. And the hybrid market will allow small businesses, growers, and artisans to all be in one common space. So we really want to hopefully have the support of the town in this project. We are looking to launch this project June this year. So we have some urgency tonight for that reason, that we're working really hard behind the scenes to hopefully move this forward as quickly as possible. So we understand that it is kind of late, but we do want to make sure that we can move this project forward as quickly as possible. And with your support tonight, that would be a big step in the right direction. And the market vision is, like I said, it will be that hybrid model, growers, food producers, as well as artisans and small businesses. We have partnered with the BIA as well, so we already have their support in this project. And we have looked and been to their meetings and trying to find out what the best space to work with. We have come up with more specifics, what we'll go over with that, of why we've chosen where we've chosen based on the small businesses' needs in our downtown core. And Holly will get into more specifics about what we're looking for this year.
Yes, thank you for having us. So in terms of the market specifics, with our partnership with the BIA and in working with the local mall owner, David, we've secured a space in the mall parking lot that would be closed off to road traffic, and it would support our ideal location, which is the closure between Norton Street and Port Augusta. So the closure that has been the place of BIA's event last year, the street sidewalk sale, the successful event that brought in a numerous amount of people for the community event. It fostered a lot of business growth, and all of the businesses in the downtown BIA saw a lot of success from that specific event. So we wanted to model this market after that event. In the specifics as well, we're hoping to do Thursday evening, 3 p.m. to 7. So that time range, again, is something that's unique to Comox. It would allow for people to come after work, and it would allow for our artisans, small businesses, and food producers to all collectively be able to come and participate in a market that's unique to Comox. There's a lot of other markets that are happening throughout the Comox Valley, so this wouldn't conflict with any of those. And then we wanted to just outline our needs with this market vision. So today we wanted to come to you and ask of a in-kind partnership with all the necessary supports in terms of licensing, permits, and zoning. We are hoping that we have your support in the road closure, and when it comes to it, the power services that would be needed for all the vendors. We wanted to, again, have this be a partnership alongside the BIA. So in hopes that we would be able to have your support community through the various communication channels used with the town of Comox. And then we also want your support to help manage and make sure that this is grown sustainably. Our partnership outlines in the paperwork that we've kind of given you today, it outlines an option for some financial support. we had a figure of $33,500. That excludes the staffing and the management of the market in terms of the actual human resources. But we wanted to outline the promotional needs and the essential budget that we have to work with this year. In the in-kind partnership would be something that we would need to be able to move forward for 2022. And the financial contribution would make it so that it is something that is, again, something that the town could be proud of. We wanted to also put the option of $10,000 and then with the option of no cash contribution, but consideration for 2023.
So why work with us? We have extensive backgrounds in marketing, event management. I'm an entrepreneur and downtown business owner as well, so I have that perspective and experience. And we've grown a lot of good relationships with the projects we've already had in our community, relations with growers, with other small businesses, and we tend to use those relationships to help make this as successful as possible. And in conclusion, we just hope that you'll consider a partnership with us today and helping move this forward for this summer for 2022. We feel this is the perfect time to really use our community and create some vibrancy and really help our small business growers as well as new artisans and people who want to be in our downtown core but maybe do not have the space in our retail spaces available right now. It also will help our downtown businesses really thrive in a time that's been very challenging for all of us. And we really want to make sure that this moves forward this summer. So we really hope that you'll see the urgency of our request today and take it into consideration. We want this to really help our community really thrive in a time that's been difficult for everyone. We'll open the questions up at this point, and if anyone would like to address, that would be great.
Thank you, ladies. Any questions from council? Council Minions, McGowan, Swift, and then we'll go from there.
Here we go.
Thanks, Cleo and Holly. I just have a question if Portside Produce was planning on being there during the daytime, and just curious if they would then participate in that, or if you had any discussion with them because they're kind of the one conflicting or
yeah, he was very in support
competition.
of, he wasn't seeing it as a competition. He was very excited about the project. We're not sure what his plans are for this summer at this point, but when the last time we talked, he wasn't very supportive of the project and moving forward, and was happy with sending a letter of support if needed on our behalf. But as far as we know, he was in support of the project. We don't plan to use that space, but we will be close to him and hope that he will thrive in this as well.
Thanks, Councilor McGowan.
Hi, this is very exciting. I was just wondering if you have connected with anyone from Lush Valley or the Food Policy Council or the Farmers Market Associations for information and support. And
so we met with the farmers market before, and kind of what the visions are of the two markets and how they would differ and everything. And they are in support of us moving forward with this summer, as being that they weren't willing to take it on or wanting to take it on for this summer. And in terms of Lush, we have every intention to reach out to them. They were unfortunately not on the original meeting of this. They weren't able to make it, but they are in support of there being more places where Lush could be useful. And we do have a plan of how we can support our local charities, and that being Lush being one of the beneficiaries of that, which we'll get into more details when we're given the okay to go ahead. Hopefully.
Thanks, Councilor Swift.
Thank you. I guess I'm not really clear about what the difference between what you would be doing and what the farmers market is doing. So that would be my first question. And my other question is, would there be an opportunity, rather than closing down the street, to do some collaboration on the Portside location?
Thanks for your question. We so in terms of the Portside location, Ben was in support of us making use of his space. Right now, he's not zoned to do specifically what we have envisioned. So that would require rezoning of that space. The owner is in favor, but they, again, the space is something that there is a leaseholder agreement on it. And for the type of style market that it is, we don't imagine that we would need that space at this point in time, but the street closure specifically would benefit the businesses, and it is something that is more ideal for the BIA and for the mall to have impact in that sort of sense of actually having a street closure, driving traffic to a specific area, allowing pedestrians to walk amongst the sidewalk and back and forth. That sort of style is something that would allow for a lot more vendors to actually be set up properly versus the hill and the grassy situation that is at Portside's location. Portside is also limited to a certain amount in order to kind of serve the purpose of the market. We would hope to have a space for more vendors. And then in terms of your question regarding the different style market to what is already being done by the Comox Valley Farmers Market, our model would not be set based off of farmers and producers specifically, but it would encompass all small businesses. So artisans, educators, nonprofits, and food producers and growers alike would all be given the opportunity to take part in the market. And then again, we don't have a model that's given priority to farmers, which is what the farmers market currently has. So we would open up the area so that there is someone who maybe, let's just say, has started a small business that doesn't have the ability to pay for a lease space in downtown Comox. So a brick and mortar shop isn't something that they have in their capacity or their budget to do, but our model would allow them to get a taste for what Comox has to offer.
And speaking to that again too, is that some of the brick and mortars also plan to participate in this, and that being a big growth opportunity for them to have a not usual business with also being members of the market on a weekly basis, which was actually very successful for the businesses that participated in the BIA's market. And they actually had their biggest day of the year, when they were at that market. So that's a good opportunity for that. That wouldn't be an option at some of the other farmers markets offered here because they're limited by their mandate of how they organize that way, where ours will be a bit more of a hybrid model, open to different options that way.
Yeah, sure.
And so would you see different vendors every week, or would you expect you would have
Yeah, because
some certain consistent ones?
Yeah, so we don't want to limit the market to having everyone give us their guaranteed dates as to when they're able to come. Ideally, we would have some consistency, but we want to be able to be flexible just as everyone's needing that in times of COVID. And so we don't have a set plan for that to be able to have a set amount of spaces and limit it to a certain amount of businesses. If there's flexibility where to want to partner up on a specific spot, we want to give that opportunity. But again, because of the need to get permission from the town of Comox first, we haven't been able to go and actually seek any vendors. We have a lot of their interests, but we don't have anything finalized. So we haven't had the ability to plan that.
Councillor Grant.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, this is a very interesting idea. I know we got onto this probably 10 years ago and tried this. And one of the places that we went look was the Craig Street Market in Parksville. I assume you're familiar with that. One of the cool things that they do is they send a shuttle around to all the hotels and pick up tourists and bring them to their site. So it's a pretty good thing. I'm looking at this and I really hope we can find something that will work here, but I'm seeing some logistical issues and I don't know if they're issues or not, but I'd really like to be able to send this back to our staff to have a look at some of these things and make sure that we're going to be able to pull it off. Like I know transit has been an issue, especially in that time of day, right? Exactly where you want to be, that can be an issue. And, when you try to shut the street down at 3 o'clock, well, you have to start at about noon. So, it's a little more logistics. It's a little harder to do. And then, I know our community charter kind of disallows us from being able to give permits and cash donations and stuff to businesses. So I'm just, I'm not a legal scholar when it comes to the charter, but I know there's issues there. So, my recommendation here would be to send this back to staff, get them to kind of address some of these things, and then see if we can make this work.
Absolutely. Sounds good. We're really thankful for your insight in terms of what's worked in the past. With the sidewalk sale, we saw success with BC Transit. So we're hopeful that they will also see this as an opportunity to be able to serve their customer base further. I think that the market will drive a lot of traffic, and we're going to be very encouraging of BC Transit to be able to access the market.
I know they have a, if it's a one-off there, it's a different story than if it's a every week kind of thing. So I don't know the answer, so.
Definitely.
I think it will be anything where we are kind of creating a change in a community is there's going to be that uncomfortable time for those adjustments. And we really hope that transit would work with us and maybe find a solution so that it does also create more people using the bus system too, and hopefully that vibrancy in the community again. We do know that they have rerouted around this particular block that we're looking to, and we aren't going to be blocking the one on Port Augusta. So we hope that they would work with us for a few hours to make those adjustments. But again, those are questions where we're willing to work with staff and make sure that we can find a solution that works for everyone. We by no means are trying to step on any toes that way, but we know that those are things that will need to be addressed, definitely.
Thanks, Councillor Bissinger.
Sure, thanks. I'm super excited to hear that this could be an option for the town of Comox. I think it would really brighten up the downtown and not just the marina, but the actual Comox Ave, which seems to sometimes get neglected. I guess just I had two questions, like one around the funding. I know you mentioned in the realm of like 33K. So I guess first question is like the market still move ahead if you weren't able to get that funding, especially, like Councillor Grant was saying, we probably, wouldn't be making a donation to a business unless we maybe partner with the BIA. But then secondly, just to follow up on Councillor Grant's comment about staff review, like what kind of timelines are you looking at? Like I understand June's coming up soon. So, staff would review the proposal. I'm assuming it would have to be done sooner than later to get RCMP, BC Transit and all those, I guess, stakeholders on board.
So we definitely, there's some urgency because we have a lot to do in the next 3 months here. 3 months. So definitely some urgency of answers on that front, and major changes like location and those types of things may stop this from going forward this year, as we've worked really hard to get the approvals up to this point to be here today to present this to you guys. So there are some hiccups with that. In terms of funding, we are looking at ways we could move it forward without getting your support financially. Obviously, it makes our lives a lot easier if you are able to do that, where we'd be chasing potential outside funding if we aren't getting the support from the town today. We do realize it's late in the game and a lot of budgets are already set, so that might not be a possibility for this year, but we'd like to open up the conversation for next year should this be a sustainable project, because we really want it something that's going to directly support our community, our town, and that's what we hope that people would want to support. So we really hope that there'd be openings for that in the future potentially. So that's why we would like the financial asked to be out there today. We realize that the biggest thing is our infrastructure support, that we really need to know that we can have the town support on that, or else definitely we won't be able to move forward this year because it's just too late in the game to make major changes that way.
I guess just a follow-up, like how do we discuss that or get staff to act it or not? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, I think we still got some more questions around the table, and then the CAO and I were doing a little Kreskin thing, trying to get him to, for those of you who are old enough to remember Kreskin. But anyway, I was going to, Bill over there remembers Kreskin, yeah, to ask the CAO some questions. So if you don't mind, Councillor Kerr, since I think this is a good feed into Jordan. When we talk about the community charter and we talk about giving money to a business, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the community charter prohibits council from giving assistance to business. So the type of kind of sponsorship that you're talking about here, as your council's not going to be able to do that. We could longer term look into maybe some more creative ways to do. Basically, council would have to take the project on themselves and hire a company to provide the service as a contractor, and that gets into being a major project which we would have to internalize, and there's no way we get that ready for June. Now, things that we can do are, dealing with zoning, kind of not enforcing if there's no broad community support and those sorts of things we can do. Street closures as well, that's something we can do. We did, when we got this proposal in, we did send it over to Transit. Transit was not happy, I can say that. So those are things that we can look at overcoming for sure. But that whole referral process needs to start. But that's really the major thing. So as far as financial contributions, council's not going to be able to financially contribute. You're doing smaller things like road closures we can do. The in-kind stuff we can support with as well. But being a for-profit business really limits the ability that we have to be involved in the process.
Yeah, and I think all of us want to see this happen, just trying to make it work. But Councillor Kerr had his hand up and then back to Councillor Minions, right? Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. As the mayor said, we're all pretty excited about this, hoping to see it comes to fruition with the logistics taken care of. Two quick questions. One, is entertainment going to be a part of it? Outdoor entertainment? Because there's always a clamoring for that from especially the youth. They want to see people presenting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we had, sorry, I left that out of the market vision. We are planning to have weekly entertainment should this move forward. And the capacity of that, we're not sure. We'd love to have another partner, maybe support that portion of it to make it even better, because it is a lot to organize people, and I'm not a sound person either as Holly. So some components we're hoping to get more community involvement of, maybe another group supporting that end of things. But yes, every intention to make it a feel of an event each week, not just market setup. So that being, yes, the live entertainment, community groups coming in, maybe some other different entertainment that we can also make that community feel, because we all need that right now. So yes, that component is a big portion of it.
Awesome.
For sure. Yeah,
that's great. And if you need someone, the amazing Kreskin is 87 years old and still performing. So,
excellent.
You know,
There
you just Googled that.
No,
did
no,
you?
I heard him recently.
Oh, really?
See, no, it was not. The second question I have, just a question maybe for you or even to Haley and Bill, the BIA. Would the concept be the businesses would stay open that evening? Or some of them? I know the staffing issues are paramount.
Encourage them to. Do you want me to do the microphone or?
Yeah, please.
We would definitely encourage our businesses to stay open. We're not sure if we'll be able to get that, especially with the staffing crisis right now. But the biggest thing that we're seeing is people are coming to our downtown, seeing what businesses are here, and then they would come back. So we've definitely encouraged them to stay open, but that's not a guarantee at this time. But we're in full support of this project.
Great, thanks.
You want to speak to why they want the location of food shelves?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did look at a few different locations in the downtown Comox area, including the Marina Park and also kind of across from Town Hall in that green space. The businesses are pushing for Comox Avenue for the visibility and the vibrancy. We understand that the street closure is not ideal, but it's also a very great street closure that people can reroute really easily. The mall doesn't get any cut down or cut off access, as well as residential. All of the residential buildings still have access to their buildings. So, and the businesses that are surrounding that street closure are in huge support of this, and they'll definitely be engaged.
Thanks. You're all done, Councillor Kerr? Yeah, okay. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. Just a question over to CAO. Is there any way of giving an extra grant to the BIA, or a way to funnel? Let's say we decided to support we do. No, I'm not a money man. But for me, let's say we sponsored music in the park like we did last year, is entertainment separate than giving business? I think transit and timing are a bit of issues, but let's say those go away. Is there some way for the town to contribute to let's say entertainment through culture, or do a one-time COVID fund to the BIA? Maybe not. Maybe a maybe versus a yes or no.
It's one of those things that I can't give you a clear answer on. The community charter prevents you from giving assistance to business. Would funding part of an event within a for-profit business, which is meant to draw more customers to that business, cross that line if put through to a nonprofit? That's really a question that council is going to have to decide internally, and eventually would be decided at the courts if it ever made it to that level. So it really would just come down to the level of risk council would be willing to accept to provide that type of support.
I can go.
Oh, sorry.
So the quick follow-up to that would be also with funding to the BIA, it's kind of linked that's where it would be going, is the same thing. There wouldn't be a extra funding through BIA for community initiatives during COVID.
So that's something that council can do, right? You can help the BIA, and they can help with set up if it's a BIA. This becomes a lot simpler from the town's perspective. If it's a BIA event. If it's a BIA event, which the BIA is then hiring this company or another company as contractors, that becomes a lot easier from our perspective. Now, that doesn't mean the overall organization of the event becomes a lot easier. That's now on the BIA and how they're going to manage that and their insurance and all of those sorts of things. And they're going to have to take complete ownership of the event and all of the other things that come with that. So I want to make clear, I'm not saying that that's an easier way to go about it. I'm just saying from the town's perspective, our involvement is much cleaner with a nonprofit than it is with a for-profit event.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Do we have any other?
I just
Councillor
wanted
Grant,
to
yeah.
mention too with the BIA that we don't actually really fund the BIA. It's done by tax requisition. And so it's a little bit different than, this would be a complete departure as to how to do that. So.
I wanted to speak to, we are a for-profit business at the moment, but we have thought very strongly about being a not-for-profit. The process to do that is quite difficult, would not be able to do that before starting this market this year. However, if that opened up more doors for next year, we would potentially look at that. But for us to do that before this year starting, I know that limits our funding options, which we realize, but yeah, we couldn't change that for this year's season, but that is definitely something we've considered as a business to move forward. As we pretty much operate in that way, we give a lot of our time and our energy to these projects, and we're really not really a for-profit business at the moment, but I'm under the umbrella of that at the moment. So just to bring clarity to that we are willing to work with what made sense for the town going forward too.
Yeah, and I think with the partnership and the in-kind asks, we also we were happy to seek external sponsorship, and the model that we presented is something that we're happy to work on. I think the urgency in providing our community with something that brings vibrancy, keeps people here in the town of Comox, and supports our small businesses that have suffered so much. We're willing to look at all options. We did go to the BIA with the option of them taking the event and having ownership of the event themselves, and us just running it essentially as volunteers. But that wasn't something that they could feasibly pull off in 2022. So we were happy to take responsibility and ownership of the event, and then in partnership with them and any support that they were willing to offer us, move it forward. But again, we put it on them as an option that they would again run this market directly as a BIA event. And we can move it back there. It's just something that feasibly the BIA, as Haley is the one employee of the BIA, it wasn't something that they thought they would feasibly pull off. So again, our time is our volunteer time, and the only way to act on behalf of businesses is to be a business. We would happily be volunteers working as a business, but in order to have insurances ourselves, we have to be a business. If we could revert to simply being volunteers, that would be something that we would consider, but it's way easier to do business for businesses as a business.
Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so there seems to be lots of support, but lots of issues that need to be dealt with. So how do we need a motion to send this for a staff report, or so do you want me to make one now? No.
So my advice is always first heard deferred if council wants to take it up later in the meeting, but it's up to you how you want to deal with it.
So under new business, is that where you want to do? Okay.
You're not looking for a motion, put it under new business. We'll just pick it up there. Yeah, okay. So we'll discuss it there, but understanding we do have a lot of constraints, unfortunately, with this. And, monetary, where we're governed by the community charter, time, it's, but then on the other hand, COVID, everybody wants to get out, they want to have fun. And I totally get that whole vibrancy need, just how do we make it fit? So, we've got some great people in the BIA. We're very fortunate to have Bill and Haley and the rest of the team. And I know if there's a way we can make this work, that those two will be instrumental, and if we can help, yeah. So we will talk about it at new business.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for your consideration. And if there is any questions that we can answer, we're happy to.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your guys' time today. We appreciate it.
All right, so we will Move on to adoption of the regular council meeting minutes of March the 2nd.
Second.
All in favor? That's carried, thanks. And consent agenda, we have a few items there. So we have a mover and a seconder of all that.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and anybody want to pick any ones out in particular? Councillor Minions.
I just want to pull out number 2, which is the speeding along Glacier View Drive. Seconder.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about the moving and second of the individual ones. The CAO and I talked about that. I find it quite onerous. And so I'm happy that once we move and second them at the beginning, that then you have number 2, you have number 3. We just talk about them and deal with them at the time. So perfect.
Sounds good. One step gone. I'm just wondering with Glacier View Drive, if we have any kind of traffic study information or have done traffic counts, because kind of out of the places where people do speed, it seems like the kind of the third way into Courtney seems to be a really busy road. So I'm wondering if we have any stats or have done traffic counts there to see if, what the actual research and information is.
We have, and I believe Glacier, off the top of my head, Glacier View Drive was one of the areas that was identified for traffic calming. And so I think that there are plans to move forward with traffic calming in the area. I don't believe it's this year. I want to say it's next year. I'll follow up and find out what those, first of all, if I'm correct in my memory and what the traffic calming options are. But yes, Glacier View Drive, I believe, is one of the areas identified as meeting the threshold in our policy to trigger traffic calming.
Okay, and then just a quick follow-up. Is it possible to let kind of the area somehow know, it's mentioned that we've probably referred to RCMP before, which actually does make sense because it's the speeding, but in the meantime of having traffic calming, that are people aware of just the online RCMP reporting tool? So, it might be able to get more attention. So I don't think staff has the capability of hand delivering letters along there, but yeah. I pick up my child there every day, and people do, unfortunately, including myself on occasion, not realize that it's 50 because it seems to be a very main road. So if people were aware, they could do the online tool, that might help.
Okay. So just in reading this though, there is traffic calming devices on that street, and he's asking for them to be removed. So that poses a challenge because they've been put there to do what we were hoping. So I'm not sure what the answer would be with the report. I think it bodes back to what's been going on in the community the last couple of years. People are speeding, and last year we heard it. So yeah, CIO, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just saying.
Oh yeah,
Right there.
yeah.
There they are.
Case in point, yeah. And I'm not going into the park and talking.
Yeah. You're up there.
Been there, done that. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll just. So are you looking for anything further on that than Councillor Minions, given that there is traffic?
Yeah, there is one traffic calming thing. And so in the letter, it's interesting because he does want that removed, which doesn't necessarily make sense because it is working. But I was just curious from noticing how much people do speed along there, if it had been indicated as a high kind of speed zone, because it felt like it was. I was curious. But just if that letter or that street is being notified of future public traffic calming, that probably won't unfortunately fix that because they're not in favor of it. But
well, and that makes me
RCMP
wonder with
tool.
what the mayor's just said, if my memory was that traffic calming is actually on there. So let me find out what's actually the case.
Yeah.
So it's a divider and it has the hexagon yellow and black signs there, and they're saying that that's a part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's really where we're headed with traffic.
Yeah.
When we're getting into other things and how we're going to calm traffic, that's what we have to do is we provide those visual pinch points. Other than that, it's speed bumps, it's RCMP enforcement, and Glacier View Drive. It's what we're finding in many areas of the town that our traffic plans have a lot of these areas identified to handle the amount of traffic that we have coming through them. But the residents who have been living there for a long time and now are seeing the result of the growth of the community are seeing the increased traffic. And it's like you mentioned, it's everywhere in the community, especially on our main traffic areas. And we can continue to try to do what we can with the traffic calming, but ultimately it's up to the residents to drive the speed limit.
Yeah. Councillor Grant.
Well, I think also that it's a pretty small portion of that road that's actually in Comox. It hits onto KFN pretty quickly there, and then, which would be provincial road, I would assume. And then you've got regional districts, like you've got every jurisdiction there. But, you know, the traffic calming is in our area, but I think the problem starts up the street as they come rolling down. So perhaps referring this over to the province or somebody to have a look at this and see might be, because I think we're doing what we can do, but I think the problem comes from down the road a ways.
Sorry, Councilman, do you have another comment you want to make on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say in that case, you know, outside of the traffic calming, which is already there, just that RCMP tool, and I hate to say, put that back to them, but that is something that needs to be reported if it's ongoing, so. Just stressing that fact that if people are excessively speeding, then that needs to be reported to the RCMP, not necessarily town staff.
And this will feed into the email that I sent out earlier regarding the priorities with the RCMP and the CAO, and I'll sit down with them and reiterate again that, you know, we're seeing traffic speed issues in town that we need them to focus on. So I think, you know, if anything, we can tell Mr. Ball that, you know, we are engaging with the RCMP, and we'll talk to Inspector Kerber about that. So. Okay, thanks. Do we have anybody else? Councillor McGowan?
Number 4, please.
Number 4. Okay, go ahead.
It's another proclamation. I was just hoping to move the proclamation as an attempt to acknowledge and support our early childhood educators who are working very hard and are quite overworked, I think, at the moment. So I think it would be a small way that we can show our support.
Right, and I think maybe Jordan or Shelley, this falls under our policy, doesn't it? Because it is local. Is it for our proclamation policy? Yeah. So do you want a motion for that to have that? Okay, so do you want to move that?
I'll second that.
Okay, move second. Any questions on that? All in favor? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any other ones? I know I've got 1 or 2 to pull out, so I will speak to number 1, helmet mock. So, you know, that's the walkways is something that I've been talking about for years, and I don't get a lot of traction on it just because of the way, you know, the riparian rights are and the old common law of, you know, people owning right down. But there is, as I've spoke to council a year ago, and Councillor Kerr, you weren't on, but there is property, for example, at the end of Ellis, and I spoke to the owners there who are quite elderly, and, you know, when they pass on, they're going to give us first option maybe to purchase that land there. So that would give us a loop from Ellis, a walkway in front of their property that would connect with that condo development, which would connect with the walkway around here, and it would give the community a loop. So, you know, I tried to look for Mr. Mock's phone number to call him to explain that, but it is something that we do, and we do have the policy in place that a lot of these large lots that are on the water, when, you know, the original owners pass away and it goes to for sale or to a family member, and a lot of times they'll rezone it, and we do take 3 meters for a walkway. So it just, unfortunately, in our community, it takes a long time to do it. And then given now with what we have with UNDRIP, you know, we would have even more challenges with a waterfront walkway. But so that's it.
Yeah, so we're on the 100-year plan, but it's really the plan that we have, because every other community on Vancouver Island has the ENN railway easement down the coast, but they didn't come into Comox. So that's why when you see it in other communities, that's how they get it. But we don't have that. So this is probably, this issue's been coming up for 30 years, and if it was an easy solution, we would have done it a long time ago, right? It's just, but we do what we can do. So most people don't understand the railway easement piece and how that works, but that's the reason we don't have the ability to do it like other communities do.
Yeah, I've had some irate waterfront owners after me over the years about waterfront walkways, whether, I won't say the neighborhoods, but yes, I've had some ones that stung my ears. So, Councillor Swift.
Yeah, I think this would be something we would all enjoy. One of the things to consider, though, is the climate change and the rising sea level. And we haven't ever heard anything official, but I think there may be some potential that a berm might have to be created around the pump station down there. So you may be able to get the walkway on top of the berm.
All right, anything further we want to take on that? We'll leave the elephant in the room alone, which is the goose spitfire. So, all right. That's enough about that. Okay, so nothing further, then we'll move on to strategic planning action items report for receipt from March 16th.
Second.
Or any questions? Yeah.
Not that it's urgent at all, but I was just curious, what's going on with Prime Cannabis at the Anderson location, if they're actually going to follow through with their license, or because I know there's a bunch of commercial space opening up on Guthrie, Guthrie. So just curious.
Yeah, good question. I've wondered that too. What
it was like dead in the water or still moving ahead?
CAO, Marvin.
As far as we know, they're still planning to move ahead, but I was driving by there the other day and was wondering the same thing. So we haven't had, at the time, we were worried about a different application coming in because council restricts the total number of cannabis to 3. So we couldn't accept any more if we, with the other one dropping out of permitting, we've kind of just stopped following that one. So maybe we'll try and find out what's happening and if they're still planning to move ahead, because it's been a significant amount of time.
And maybe just a follow-up. I know when we were kind of approving this third one, we were concerned about the location and proximity to like the downtown ones. Is there a way that we should amend the bylaw right away, or if ever these guys don't proceed with their license, amend the bylaw to restrict not this area as the third one and just move it up towards like Guthrie, Anderton, McDonald area? What? Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a bakery now down at the right under. Well, there's a bakery again, not now, but.
Yeah. So that's a good question. Like, so can we, like, after a certain amount of time, say, you've timed out, we're not going to allow that, or could they just hold on to that for the next 5 years?
They've likely timed out. So they only have a limited amount of time in which they secure a position and somebody else can't apply. Like once you get approved, you have to build within a certain amount of time and then open, and then your place in the queue is still protected. So right now, most likely, I'd have to check, but most likely anybody else right now could apply. Yeah, because for that third spot.
Oh, for that spot.
For that third spot, because they have
for
not.
the third spot outside of where that current one is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the whole intent was that you couldn't, because it was a limited amount, you couldn't just try and secure a place in the queue and just lock it up.
Yeah.
Right? To
Yeah.
stop other
Yeah, it seems
competition
like-
or.
Yeah. Councillor Minion, I think you had your hand up there.
I was just gonna say, I don't know how reliable the source is, but I'd heard rumors that they weren't recently, that they were looking to lease the space. So I don't know if that's true, but it might be a perfect time for us to fix that bylaw and try to get it more in a different location. So again, I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard recently that they weren't, which kind of fits the delay.
It's something that we can look at, and I just asked this question to council to kind of judge where you guys are sitting on this. Is there a need in the community to restrict the number that are here? I think at a lot of the times when this was first coming in, it was a desire to make sure that there was a lower number controlled because you didn't know what the type of business clientele and the spill out would be. We haven't seen major issues anywhere from these type of establishments. So, we can try and push them into different locations. It's certainly something council can do. But we're seeing across BC that once you have too many cannabis shops open, the market just pushes them out and they close anyway. I think that's what we've seen in Comox so far, is that the community has enough business to support 2 and possibly not 3. But I'm just throwing that out. If we're looking at it, do we want to try and make sure it's in a different area? Is council still interested in restricting the number? What's the general kind of thinking on this?
Councillor Swift.
Thank you. Well, I think we need to take a look at that bylaw because I think when we brought it in, we were a little bit worried about just the concerns that you've expressed. But there aren't too many businesses that we restrict the number. We usually let the marketplace dictate it. You know, we're not restricting massage therapists or hairdressers or anything. So if we were to have a look at that bylaw, I think we should, you know, put some more thought into it, having seen the way these businesses operate. And maybe we don't need to restrict them, the number that is. And I think again, the marketplace, I think in our minds, we always thought there would be 2 down here and 1 up here, but that isn't the way it's kind of played out. So I think, you know, it would be, when we run out of other things to do, maybe we can have a look at that bylaw again.
Okay, we'll go with Councillor McGowan, and then I think I saw Bissinger hand up.
Yeah, no, I agree with Councillor Swift there. I think there was a lot of fear and a lot of probably misinformation or you know, stigma that came along with it when they were just opening up. And we can see that they've just been, you know, good businesses for the Valley or for Comox. So I would be in support of looking at that bylaw. You make a great point about that being the only thing that we kind of restrict. So, you know, they're not an issue. Why not check it out, right?
Thanks, Councillor Bissinger. Okay, Minions.
Yeah, just in agreement with Councillor McGowan and Swift. I know that a 2nd and 3rd shop just opened down in the Comox First Nation within the last 2 weeks also. So I think Marketplace will probably take care of it, and there's going to be more just down the road. So good pricing. So I think we probably don't have to worry about it too much.
Okay. All right. Anything further on the strategic plan or that? Seeing none, all in favor of the strategic plan for March 16th? Oh, you'd still had, okay, go ahead.
Apologies. I'm just curious if we have a date set in June for the climate adaptation or green, kind of whatever it's been called, open house. Just people have been kind of asking now that June's getting closer.
There are times reserved in the community center. I wouldn't say those are dates yet because we need to make sure we can meet those dates. But yes, we have time set aside. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I will find out and let you know. But right now, those are the goals we're working towards. We're on the timeline to hit those, but it's not at the point of letting the public know that those are the dates to come attend.
Okay, and I meant to ask a second question at the same time. We talked about March or April being kind of a strategic meeting on climate, kind of emergency planning. And I know it kind of got stalled because a lot of it was based on what's happening with Connect and shelters. But I do think that it would probably be a good conversation, even if it's not including that information. So is that something that we can aim for in the spring? Do you think realistically, even if it's just an overview of what is being done regionally, what does the fire department do? Just kind of like a summary that can be shared with the public. Because I don't know, we don't know when the next necessarily storm or weather event will happen.
I will talk to the CVRD and see what their ability to come in and join us for that will be, and I'll let you know. But I do know that I think they're really stretched right now. So let me have that conversation and see where we can land.
Okay, thanks. Anything further on that? Your draft plan, all in favor? Ken, you're good. Okay, and that's carried. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead. All right.
It's set to 67 words.
All right. Well, we just want to make sure the CAO is comfortable before we carry on. So, can I get you a drink or anything? Or oh, you got one? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so we'll move on to the youth recreation survey report.
Second.
Okay, so for comments, questions, concerns, Councillor Minions.
I'm just looking at the recommendations that are put forth, kind of 1 through 5. I know the costs for the skate park and pump track or skate park pump track are really variable. But if we were to look at 2, 3, 4, and 5 in past reports, those numbers have been provided. Do you know roughly if that recommendation was passed? I know in this report it wasn't included, but what the rough budget implication would be of that's kind of like the ping pong table,
Yeah.
the chess, the ping pong, the dock, and the outdoor chairs. Is there a rough number for those combined?
Well, there would be that in the, you're correct, there'd be that in the other report. There wouldn't be any financial impact for 2022 because we wouldn't actually be constructing anything in 2022 other than the purchase of the ping pong tables, which would be, let me just give you the math here. .12 impact on taxes, a 0.12% impact on taxes to put the ping pong table down this year. And there's no other costs this year because all we're proposing to do this year is to move forward with, there's a small cost with the outdoor seating options as well. So, 0.12 goes to 0.15, something like that. So it's very, very minimal for what the recommendations are here, and then everything else just to get the planning done to move forward in the future. And then 2023 is when you would examine the impact for the costs that would come for the pump track if we were to construct it then. So yeah, very minimal costs to move forward on these items right now.
So I've got a question, like, there's some in here that I like, there's some that, I'm not too sure about. The outdoor seating is one of them. I think that the cost, where we would put them, anchoring them to the ground, they'd have to go in the grassy area because if we were to anchor them in call it the pavilion area where the interlocking bricks are, I hate to say, but, they'll probably get vandalized. And, we've seen all the big pots down there vandalized. So those chairs, if they're left out all the time, the bricks are going to be lifted out, or we take the bricks out, we put a pad down and bolt them to that. I don't know. I like the idea of the ping pong table.
See, and I was going to say something, but a ping pong table.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering what the logistics are of a ping pong table in the wind. Like, can you even play if it's windy? Because it's almost always windy. And the other thing is, I'm not sure how sturdy that table is. Like, I'm trying to envision the picture, but is it something that if you stood on it, could you break it off? Or is it really solid?
It's like those reinforced concrete picnic tables down there, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It just strikes me that, in a windy location, trying to hit a ping pong ball is almost impossible. So
Well, it makes the game a little more interesting. Yeah. Council Minions.
Yeah, the one that I didn't really like was the outdoor seating as well. I just couldn't quite conceptualize it for the cost. So I originally was going to say all but 3, like 1, 2, 4, 5, since 2 of them don't have cost. One's putting a report, one's just asking about the Comox Harbor, kind of the regulatory. But I would actually say that I think a big game is fun and a lot of communities have tried it. So getting myself confused here, but 1, 2, and 4, which is the kind of getting started for the pump and skate track, but not having funds yet having to be decided. The youth recreation survey being forwarded, and then looking at regulatory. So 1, 2, 4, but I would say I would be interested to add the chess game, which is number 4 at the bottom there. Because I think trying out a big game, depending on the cost, so hopefully that would be able to come back even if passed. That's where I'm at. Would move that if there was any similar support.
I'll second it.
Okay, so moving second.
Maybe just go through them one at a time because you're going to get into, okay, I support this and this, but not that. And then,
okay, let's start with number 1, the council direct staff. So Councillor Kerr, seconder for them. Okay, so for discussion for number 1 and the 2 points underneath it. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I really like this kind of two-phase approach as we discussed at a previous meeting. So the pump track, which is more affordable to build, easier to actually implement, doing that first, and then looking for the grant and the maybe external funding to help with the construction of a more expensive skate park beside it down the road. And again, I assume implied in this is the kind of dual design at outset. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, that's why I would really like to move forward on number one.
SCA.
Yeah, so just the whether it's a dual design, what we're saying is in 2022, let's find out what it is we want, right? Because there's the potential. Let's just talk about the pump track. We can do the paved pump track, or we can do the dirt pump track. There's benefits and drawbacks to each of them. If we go with the paved pump track, it would make sense to put that next to the skate park because it would be used by the same pieces of recreation infrastructure. If we went with the dirt pump track, it would make sense to put that in a location that could have a bike skills park developed in the future, because those would share the type of recreation infrastructure used. So that's where we need to go to. And when we're looking, one of the tough things that we're finding, I think, with everything we're doing in Comox is that we do not have space for these items. So, the 3 locations to put something across from the community center will require removing some recreation infrastructure, the Top Lot Park, and rearranging the Frisbee golf, although right now, conceptually, we think that those can live together. Moving it over to something like Aspen Park and removing a baseball diamond or a soccer field, and the community feedback we will get if we do that, and putting it across from Public Works, which, as we heard from the resident that wrote in, is far away from parts of our residential nodes and will require a significant number of trees to be removed in order to do that. So those are the 3 locations that we really see could possibly house these things, and they all have the pros and cons, and that's where it's important to go and talk to the community, find out what they want, where they think it should go, what type of design, and those sorts of things.
So the other day I went for a walk with actual Councillor Kerr and Bissinger along Pritchard, and we walked through the sand pit there. And that's Crown land. Is there any way that we could get that land? I know it's a little bit farther out, but here's an area that I think would be right for the picking of what we're looking for. Is there a way that we would be able to engage with them?
We can reach out to the province. The province is usually fairly good about if not giving the land, entering into 99-year leases where you have to maintain it for recreation. So those are the type of things we can talk about that would possibly push the project out longer. One thing to think about is you've got, we're targeting the age groups of 11 to 15 or 16. If you were to put it in that location, you're going to be sending the kids along that busy road without a raised sidewalk in order to access it. So and how are parents going to feel about requiring that to happen? There's no, in our concept plan for Northeast Comox, Marvin, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had envisioned having that linear or that north-south corridor with the sidewalks within the development, not upgrading Pritchard to have a sidewalk there, correct? So, even when that develops, you're not going to get a sidewalk along there. And is that a deal breaker? I don't know, but it would be, again, something to talk to the community about. Would you send your kid along that road to access it? And again, going down where you don't have the vision of people using and all that stuff.
It's a very wide shoulder. I mean, I've ridden my bike there many times and felt comfortable, but yeah, an 8-year-old who's a lot different. So yeah, okay. Councillor Minnis, did you have your? Oh, Councillor Swift, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm just throwing out here. I'm not suggesting this is ideal, but having taught at Golardy School for 30 years, they have a huge property there. And much of it is a playground that is never used. So I don't know if it's probably a bit of a long shot, but I don't know. There would be no trees that would have to come down. If a collaboration could be considered for having a conversation. Golardy School on Noel. Yeah. It's, the kids could get there. There's bike lanes, there's sidewalks and so on. And I'm sure they have fewer kids than the property would support. So just putting it out there is a bit of an out of the box type of thinking, but it might be worth considering.
Dominions and then Grant.
I just had a quick clarification. Did you say one of the second location mentioned would be like where the disc golf and the top park in that park would be and they would coexist?
Yeah, so. If, so the one location across from the community center, if you took out the playground there, and then there's a small grove of trees just to the north of the playground. If you take those out, I think it's like a group of 4 or 5, you open up considerable space that you can get quite a bit in there. There's one disc golf hole that would cut through there that you'd have to either remove or somehow reallocate throughout, but you can, there's a significant amount of space in there that you could get a pump track or a skate park, possibly both, depending. And this is where we're saying we need to get out to do the public consultation, get the designs, get it all figured out and find out. And, you know, through the public consultation, maybe we get ideas, just like Councillor Swift said, you know, we hadn't even thought about putting in Gallardi School. So that's another thing that we can take a look at doing as well. Maybe removing some of the treat area near Aspen, that might open up Aspen School, which was just shown, you know, that might open up things. And I think that's why we just need to make sure we go out, let's talk to the community, let's hear from them. And then we can put all those kind of locations together and figure out where we're going to go from there.
Okay. I think that's a perfect location because of how central it is, but I just golf in there quite often. And I think there's more than one hole that does cross back there. And so I would say the challenge would be is I think you would disrupt like you know, so that was my thought when I heard that. I thought that sounds like an impossible location, but it is really, really central. So if you could somehow make both of those different groups or maybe same users, I think a pump track might be more used, but you know, the disc golf actually is quite well used, and those holes, like they go, maybe you should try if you haven't.
The disc golf,
but it would be a challenging location in my opinion, and it is a quite well used.
The disc golf is very well used. I wouldn't recommend moving forward on, and this is where we've got to get into find out what the actual impact is. But if it was a question of putting this infrastructure in and losing the disc golf, that'd be something we really need to think about. You know, I just know from personal experience living near that area, it is well used, often used, always used, and not just in the summer too. It's used in the fall, the spring, and even gets a decent amount of use in the winter as well. I think that's a real success story that's maybe not talked about in Comox as much as it should be.
There's a lot of small children in there, so I just imagine like bikes also would be a little hectic. But
You should talk about disc golf more because that's the first project I brought to council when I first started. So I'm glad to see that it's actually working. But so, you know, I think too, when you get into that's a great location for sure, but that's called the Big Woods there. And when you start looking at trees in the Big Woods, been there, done that, good luck. That's good luck with that. But not saying it won't happen, just saying. On the sand pits, is there any environmental sensitivity there? Like usually with sand, there's some issue with environmental.
Yeah, I think for that area, we'd have to take a look at and all those questions. Just one thing to think about on that area is you're higher and then you're dipping down into there. Generally, this type of infrastructure, you want to put somewhere where it can be seen, from the roads and overseen.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give you a cautionary tale. So in Terrace, when I was growing up, they wanted to put a skate park, and there's a big pushback from the community. We don't want a skate park. It's going to lead to drugs and violence and alcohol and gangs and all those sorts of things. So you had a strong enough group to push it forward and a strong enough group to try and oppose it. And what ended up happening was it got pushed forward, but it got put in a location behind a hill that could only be seen if you were at, and it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So what did it become? The thing that people said it was going to. Why? Because it wasn't put in a location where it could be seen. So it's just something to think about with this type of infrastructure to make sure it can be easily seen and monitored by the public. And, you know, I think maybe I'm going a little bit too deep into the analysis because we've got to actually do the analysis. So
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing I was going to mention is on skate parks and pump tracks. If you talk to communities that have the noise as an issue with them, so when you get too close to houses, Cumberland will tell you that the pump track, when they have an event, they get nothing but complaints from the neighbors, and they're not even very close to people. So, you know, it's one of those double-edged swords, right? You want to put it a little out of town, but then you want it downtown. So yeah, that's why we need the analysis, I think, to figure out the best places.
Okay, so we're at number 1. And we got to be out of here by 7:30. Lights out. So any more discussion on 1? So it looks like, we're looking at sending it back to staff, getting some more reviews on it, seeing what we can do for grants and so on for the following year. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so all in favor of that? And that's carried. Thank you. Move to, and that is to move it, that survey to the School District 71 for consideration. So any comments on that? All in favor? That's carried. 4, that the town begin the regulatory approval process for a swim float installed at Comox Harbor. So seconder. Okay, for discussion. Yeah, I like this one. I think, if we can get approval on that, I think it'd be a really cool thing for the kids to do down there that potentially wouldn't cost a lot of money. So I like that. So any other questions, comments on that? All in favor? So that's carried. Number 5, that the concrete ping pong table. Oh, you can put some lead in the ball. There you go. And a concrete paddle. Yeah. So we got a mover and a seconder on that. Do we have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Kerr, seconder. So any comments or questions on that? Councillor Minions?
Yeah, just with what Councillor Grant had said, I think a large chess game, although I guess security would have to be thought about, but I would prefer to see something that's logistically possible. I think it's windy out there 2/3 of the time. So that's just my comment, is I think it's easier to do a chess game in a windy spot than it is ping pong.
Yeah, that leads to storage of the pieces because they're big. They're about as tall as Councillor Bissinger. So yeah. And they take up a big square footage. So that's something to consider. Maybe that's something that staff could bring back to us about where you would look to put that.
If we were looking at a big game like that, the community center would be better. We could take them in, we can put them, we have significant issues already that we don't have enough space to store things. And like you said, you're going to need a shed to store all them, or you leave them outside and then they're damaged, broken, and stolen, or in the ocean, right? So it's not to say that we can't do it down at Marina Park. Just if we do, how we're going to deal with the storage issue is going to be tough.
Could we look at that after we've got the plans for the Marine Services building? Because maybe there's room in there for a little storage for stuff like this, and
we can definitely look at it after. I just maybe caution to say that I can tell you honestly right now that there's the space that is going to be provided in the Marine Services building, especially for storage, is accounted for probably 3 times over already.
Right. And that's going to take a larger square footage there than we have. So
the other option is that we store them somewhere else. Maybe Town Hall doesn't have the space for it anywhere. So then we're taking it over to the Public Works yard. And then just that would be, I think you'd want to ask what the cost of that is and having somebody go, and then you want it on the weekends and you're going to want it available. It's going to get pretty expensive pretty quick.
I like the idea of the rec center.
The rec center is something that could be done easily. It's got lots of hours. We can put cameras on it. We can find storage.
Okay, I'm going to go with McGowan and then this.
For the ping pong table, is there a way that we can situate it somewhere where it would get wind blockage from, most of the angles, or an area that the wind is generally coming from to cut down on the wind?
You just got to hit the ball harder.
No, probably not. The only wind blockage you're going to get is the southern bound wind, but anything coming off this way, anything coming this way, anything coming that way, we're not going to be able to do any wind blocking.
Councillor Bissinger.
Sure, thanks. I guess my question is why does it have to be at Marina Park? Can we look at like Port Augusta, that's kind of more sheltered and away from a road, so balls fly around, or even I'm not even sure what other park I was thinking of, but even, just the little
No,
stretch out here
yeah.
or the Park Street by the hospital or Park Place or whatever that place is called, but just have one or two tables elsewhere and that becomes like a ping pong park and it's just like a place to go now.
I like the idea of Port Augusta Park because, there's a name for it right now, and this way it would bring a little bit more activity to there other than bringing your dog and let it run and do its business. So, yeah. Well, did you have your hand up, Counselor? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like the idea of a big game. Like in travels throughout the world, they have them in many communities, and they've always been really good resources, and also appeals to a huge age range, right? You see little guys sitting around in the park doing it, and kids, and yeah, I didn't say little old white guys. But with that in mind, I was wondering if it were to go in Marina Park, if it would work putting it up closer to the stair, and the equipment can be stored in there somehow. So just a thought.
So I've been working with a group from the Legion who are quite interested in getting the new cenotaph right down there. So, you'd have to work with them. I'm sure there's room, but that is something they've been working hard on. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I like the idea of the ping pong table at the park as like an attracting venue. People will, gather around and watch, bring their, paddles and balls down and play. So I think, yeah, it'll be windy, but I think that's part of it. So I do like that. And so I would vote in favor of this. Also, just thinking about the big games in context of this, you can also have seating tables, like you see in many cities that have a chessboard on the table. So people can bring their pieces and you play outdoor and watch each other. So that would be another kind of cool kind of spectator sport. And having a few of these down Marina Park, I think would be really attractive.
Yeah, so some good ideas on that one. So do we want to, with number 5, that a concrete ping pong table and smaller chess tables, but concrete smaller chess tables where you sit at it, right? 2 people be scattered throughout the park. You're okay with that? You're okay with anything we pass a motion on?
Whatever council wants.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd suggest, why don't we do one of each first? Let's see how it takes off. And because it's easy to buy more, harder to give them away.
Yeah. So the one picnic table, the one ping pong table, and a smaller one-on-one concrete type of chessboard. Yeah. Okay. And Councillor Grant, you're good with that?
Well, I think it's just going to be a place where people sit and eat their fish and chips, to be honest with you, because you're not going to be able to play. And whether you think you will or you won't, you won't. So, I don't, I don't find that to be a viable option. To be honest with you.
So, okay, because you didn't move number 5, did you?
We did.
You did. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. That's okay. Councillor Bissinger.
I agree with Councillor Grant. Like, I do like the ping pong table, but it doesn't need to be at Marina Park. Like, we've got so much stuff there between the food trucks, nautical days, the parks, the splash park. Like, we don't need to crowd it more than it already will be. So, I'd support a ping pong table, but let's look at somewhere else, like Port Augusta, and then, or even the chess. Like, you could literally have like a games park in Port Augusta and just have this whole new vision for another park downtown. Like, it's close enough to Marina Park.
Yeah, this one just okay.
Or just across from Town Hall, or the one on Park Place. Like, there's so much room everywhere else in town.
So the one across the street is not a park. It's actually commercially zoned.
Yeah.
And it can be sold. So that's probably not a great place to put it.
Good luck with that.
But there are maybe some other locations that would work.
Yeah. CAO had his hand up.
I was just going to say, Council, you've made a lot of progress on this report. Maybe where you are right now, you're kind of getting into options evaluation rather than trying to push to make a decision today that maybe you'll regret in the future. If you want to just move this back to the next report and deal with anything that hasn't been, or next agenda and deal with anything that hasn't been decided. Again, if you guys are comfortable making a decision on it now, that's fine. But if not, you've got time. This isn't a rush.
Yeah, and Shelley just pointed out to me, Anderton Park is a good one too, where the tennis courts are. I actually like that idea too, because there is those games there, those exercise things that no one uses.
Yeah.
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 I'll
So
make
could,
a friendly amendment.
yeah. So could we just change from purchasing to having staff find a, for staff to look at other locations? And then it'll come back. Yeah, I don't care. The chess is
chess.
fine. I'm a little, yeah.
So ping pong and chess. So for number 5, that a concrete ping pong table and concrete chess tables have search for a location
I
for
think
it.
we're mixing two things here. I think we should, what I would do is I would say do the concrete ping pong table and get staff to discuss different locations. I think the chess, the smaller chess boards down here, I have no problem with that at all. So I think that would actually be a pretty good spot for them, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could eat your fish and chips on them, you know, really, and play chess later. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Councilor Bissinger, you had your hand up. Oh, sorry, Minions, yeah.
I think because they are new ideas tonight, and there's been quite a few, I like the idea of a games park in Anderton Park, but they're all very new ideas. So I personally would prefer to defer it to talk about where could a good, like, games, small games, concrete games, or you want to call them, location. Because I could easily vote for Anderton Park, which is a great idea, or split them. But I think we could take one meeting to make sure that the ideas are all there since they're new. So defer 5 to staff report on location.
And for the next meeting for further discussion. You're good with that, CAO? Okay. And Councillor Swift, did I not?
Well, yeah, I agree. I think we should do that. My one thought about the ping pong table is how much noise it creates. And so we need to be cognizant of that when located in like Anderton Park, just because of all the housing around there. I have no idea how much noise they make, so.
Probably
might
not as
be an
many
issue
as
at
a
all.
tennis ball. Yeah.
Less than tennis?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
because the tennis can be noisy sometimes, but yeah, just a thought. Okay.
All right, so we've voted on the other ones and we put 5 into the next meeting for discussion. So we're good with that. We'll move on to, and also unfinished business. So this is where we were going to talk about the Love Local. You had said new business. Oh, new business. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's right where I put it. Okay, good. So we'll move on to affordable housing contribution updates and secondary.
Second.
Okay, so for discussion, Councillor Bissinger.
Sure, thanks. And thanks, staff, for putting this together. I appreciate the 1.6. I would definitely prefer to see it go up. And it's kind of like that fine balance between what makes sense to have developers go for higher density versus just single family homes. And I wonder, if the 3,000, if there was an opportunity to increase that to 4, just so it would make it more attractive to have actual, higher density multifamily, I guess, uplifts of rezoning, and then just having that 1.6, go up to 3 or something of the sort. I think anyone who's developing right now probably bought land a year or 2 years ago and is benefiting from some crazy increases in price. And I understand that, cost of construction is going up, but that is already getting passed over to, the consumers when they're selling or when they're purchasing the home. So that's kind of like what I would go for. So I don't know if I need to make an amendment right now or if we want to get more comments from the rest of council.
Do we have any other questions or concerns from council? Councillor Swift and then Minions.
Thank you. I know we need to adjust our affordable housing contributions, but I'm really struggling with this because I don't like what we're doing with them. And so I don't know how to move this forward, especially when we're hearing from the coalition that they can leverage each dollar into $19. I'm just not sure why we're trying to get into the housing market ourselves. So, these numbers look okay to me, but I just don't know how to move it forward without developing that inventory that I'm really strongly opposed to.
Yeah, that was an eye opener for myself as well, the $1 to $19 additional dollars. And, I was in favor of allowing a group manage the money, and then, we're at where we are. But Councillor Minions, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, just to address that one kind of concern, I think the reality is we can still partner with nonprofits, and the town of Comox is going to be here no matter what. And I assume also the coalition is not going anywhere, but the amount of control that we can have working with partners versus giving the dollars direct. So I don't necessarily think we lose that $1 for 19 because it's coming through the town of Comox and possibly being managed by them, but it gives us the control to change societies or change who we partner with. I think the town of Comox in general is becoming almost like what Kelowna or Whistler or Victoria was 10 years ago. And we're seeing such high demand for, there hasn't been a lot on the market that's lasted, I would say in the last 6 to 12 months. So lots are valued at 400 to 600,000, but they're being bought in lots by developers. So I personally would like to see a number of around 4,000 for single family, and really see hopefully densification, which we've talked about kind of with the step 3 for the Northeast. City of Vancouver, City of Nanaimo, they're looking at 3%. And I don't think our developers are in the same type of category and size, but I think that around 2.5%, which would have seen 5 or 6 units versus the 3.8 roughly that we got on Aspen. I think that's doable for where our community is going. And, lots have gone up approximately 40% in the last 12 months. And so do we need to in future go back and look at is, in my personal opinion, something like 2.5% and 4,000, is that too high? If we see drastic changes in the market, possibly, but I think we have room to kind of move the marker, and just seeing what the coalition is able to do with funding, and if we can be, putting units out there for renters or first time, people moving into the market, co-housing, whatever type of opportunities we may find ourselves in, there's no doubt in my mind that there's wiggle room on those numbers because of, condos are at 450, townhouses are at 800,000. The last 2 or 3 houses that sold in Comox went $250,000 over ask price. So I just don't believe that there's not room in the town of Comox. I don't know how we didn't make small town of BC top 32, because the town of Comox in general is literally where people are moving to, and they want that small town feel. So I hope to see this number go up, but I do understand we're not Nanaimo, who I think they had the biggest targets. They were going to be taking 8,000 per lot by 2025. So that's where they're expecting they go. I don't think we're there, but I also don't think we're the same old kind of Courtney Comox we were 5 years ago. So I would support something around 2.5% and 4,000 per lot, which I thought was under a percentage of what they would sell for in the market.
Okay, any other questions or comments on Councillor Grant?
Yeah, so I guess whenever you do this, all you're doing is contributing to the high cost of housing when you raise this up too much. It's really difficult to know whether this is reasonable or not when we can't get any reasonable comparisons. The last comparisons we got were so all over the map, you couldn't make a comparison as to whether we were on the mark or not. But I do know that developers will simply add that cost to the top. And, they have a cost to build, they expect a profit, which is fine. But if you raise it up, you're just making it more unaffordable. The other thing is I'm with Councillor Swift. I have a real problem with us getting into the housing business and owning housing. At some point in time, you get where you have enough of these that you have to open a department to run it. And I'm not sure how you fund that. Like, the way to fund that, it seems to me, would be out of the affordable housing contribution, which is then taking away from affordable housing. Otherwise, you have to go for taxation. And I think that when I hear that the Coalition to End Homelessness does what they do, and that, by the way, is what they were set up to do. They were set up to take on these things. We used to get every one of those groups coming to our table looking for money, and as a result, nothing ever got funded. The whole idea of the coalition was to put it under one umbrella and let them deal with the hard choices of who gets what and where it goes. So I don't think that our town wants to get into owning housing and being in that market when you have people that actually know what they're doing to take this on, and the cost of operating it will fall on us, and it will either come out of these contributions in the future or have to be taxed for. So I'm not sure why it seems like such a good idea to be in the housing market when you've got somebody else that can actually do it and probably do it better.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I like the idea that we're working towards affordable housing because, you know, it's a horrible thing out there for folks to try to find it, but I think we're using the wrong vehicle. But Councillor Minions, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, just talking to staff, if I understood correctly, nothing is stopping us from partnering with the society and leveraging the groups that they work with. It's just giving us the first right to decide which direction we go in. So it's not to say that the coalition doesn't know which projects are best. And I think they are absolute best #1 asset to go to. But I think at the end of the day, what's been happening in communities isn't working. So we need to do something a little more drastic. And also nothing stops us from selling. If we get 6 units on a big project, nothing stops us, you know, from having certain terms and being able to release it when costs get too high if the will of council and the town is not to go into housing. So again, that means you're selling something, but the benefit there is still we can 100% work with the coalition or whatever organization that turns into. If that gets so big and changes, it just means we're in control of the fund. So it's not to say we don't think that they know what they're doing and that we want to turn on that 19:1 ratio, because I don't think at all we've closed the door to that, doing it this way.
I guess my counter argument to that would be if we don't own the houses, we still have the ability to put these funds where we choose to. So it doesn't necessarily have to go to the Coalition to End Homelessness. If there was someone else out there like Macola or somebody that we wanted to deal with, we could certainly still do that and still not own them and take the risk of all that.
Okay, yeah, and I wouldn't want to be having town owned and then tell them we have to sell them and evict them at some point. So, yeah, the CAO.
Yeah, I just want to make clear kind of how both systems work in the direction that's in the policy right now. So in the long-term acquisition model, what would happen is the town would purchase and own the units. So we wouldn't be going out to the nonprofits and looking for partnerships with them on projects. We would be looking at using the funds that we have to purchase units in new construction. From there, we would look to find somebody who could operate it for us. So that would be the level of partnership that we have, is they would be operating it for us, but it wouldn't be a partnership in that we're working with the Coalition to End Homelessness or any other group prior to find out what type of projects they're trying to do. We're going to be putting our money towards acquisition of units, and then any projects that they may have are not something that staff is going to be working with them on. Now, if they came to council and council gave direction to override the policy, partnership would be available then, but those conversations wouldn't be taking place at the staff level. We would be purchasing the units and then finding a group to operate them, similar to what happened in 695, if that makes sense.
Okay, any other further questions on that? So we had #1, but then there was Councilor Bissinger had made mention. So you're looking to amend it?
Yeah, if I can make a motion to increase the contribution for single lots to $4,000, and then the contribution rate, I'll go for 2.5%.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so Councilor Grant.
I don't know if you can actually do that since I'm.
I know, I was
figure it's gonna happen anyway.
I was going to ask the CIO, is that the right format? We do this for an amendment to this?
So maybe I'll just ask Corp, wasn't a motion on the table? Because I didn't think a motion was on the table.
It was a motion to receive.
A motion to
So
receive.
we haven't
So
voted on that.
the report's been received. There's no motion on the table for action. So whoever's the first mover will get to determine what the motion is.
So then that would have been Councilor Bissinger.
And Councilor Bissinger, you are moving.
She made a motion with altering these numbers.
We haven't voted on receipt yet, though.
So voting on receipt isn't required by council. When you adopt the agenda, you do it. It's something that does get into common practice. you guys want to vote on receipt and then move another motion, that's really, I'd have to defer to the chair how you want to do that. I guess all I'm saying right now is that there's no motion on the table for action forward, and we're waiting for that to be put on the floor for debate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know where we're going with this, and, you know, I don't want to get petty with it. So I think, you know, we do have a motion that was put forward by Councilor Bissinger. I'm looking at, we discuss that and vote on that.
Okay, so Councilor Bissinger, do you mind reading out your motion?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It would be alternative 1, but using the first X as 2.5 and the second X as $4,000. So that the Council Affordable Housing Amenity Contribution Policy CCL 069 as contained in attachment 1 be amended to target a unit contribution rate of 2.5% of total unit count for multifamily development and $4,000 per lot for single family development.
Second.
So I guess I would just note that in our original motion from some weeks ago, that single family lots was not included in this. So we've substantially added to our affordable housing just by leaving it the way it is. So there was no fee for single family lots the first time, and now we're going to collect $3,000 a lot. So I think we're really starting to get to a point where we're adding too much cost to these things. And you know, I look out there and I look at the unaffordability of housing, food, of gas, of all of those things, and we're just contributing more to it when we do this. And I just don't think that's the right thing to do. When we're going to collect a lot of money based on this already, and we can let it shake out and see where it lands before we just go overboard and make it more expensive for the public. I think that if you go to any water cooler, any group of people that you talk to, inflation, price of gas, price of groceries, price of living is the #1 issue that you hear in today's world. And we're contributing to that by doing this.
Councilor Minions and then Bissinger.
I think the challenge is those purchasing the home, if that $4,000 is passed on, are still going to purchase that home almost likely. I think what's happened with inflation and 300% housing costs in 10 years is definitely affecting people that weren't in the market or that are in the younger age demographic far more than it is someone purchasing a home in Comox, which is now averaging $950,000. So it's not helping the affordable housing, and yet it is such a small percentage that can be diverted back into, for example, 150 units that the coalition did last year. So no, it's not helping, but if I was at that water cooler, I would fight strongly that the people purchasing homes, myself included, are in a better position, and I would rather pay that at that point than not pay it and have not services and doors being open. So I understand how it affects it directly, but I also think that it has more impact on the other side where the funds are going than where it is for someone purchasing that home or lot.
Thanks, Councilor Bissinger, and then Kerr.
Sure, I guess maybe a question for Councilor Grant. I understand that we're contributing to unaffordability, but by not doing this, how are we contributing to affordability? How, by getting nothing from these upzonings, are we helping the community in any way? Like, I'm flabbergasted by, this money is coming in regardless. So if we're just upzoning and not getting anything out of it, how are we, helping or collecting any funds that could be used towards a unit or used towards, the coalition if we chose to override it and get that $1 for $19?
So I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying go with the original motion that's there at 1.6 and 3 instead of upping it even more.
So I guess, can we hear from the planner, what the thoughts are, sort of, the feel from the community on these rates?
These amounts were developed as an incremental increase over what we have now. What the market can support is really hard to know, and how much of the costs get passed on to the end users is hard to know. It's a difficult question for us to answer. As I mentioned before, there's been significant increases in the values of homes, and what the market can bear is very difficult for us to say. How much of these increases get taken on by the current landowners who have to decrease their price is very hard to say as well. These are very, very opaque, even for much larger jurisdictions that have departments dedicated to doing these type of analysis. So we're not sure. I really think that at the end of the day, this is a political decision to be made at the council table. And I'm not sure there's going to be any more assistance we can give you in landing on that final number. I think it's something you're going to have to decide amongst yourselves.
I can go. So I support Councilor Bissinger's motion. Just want to maybe talk about a few of these concepts that we're kind of dancing around tonight. Yes, this is an increase. If you look at Victoria, the comparison with the Aspen project, if it was in Victoria, instead of 6 units, they would have acquired, I think it was 26 to 46 units in that range. So a huge difference. We look at, and some might say Comox Valley is becoming as unaffordable as Victoria has been. We look in Nanaimo, and again, we're still way under the 8,000 plan for single family lots in Nanaimo. So I think this is reasonable. I think it's appropriate for our community. I want to also talk about, who we're trying to help. And, a lot of the people we're trying to help don't have a water cooler at work. This is a different population that are really struggling. And yeah, it hurts me when I go to the pump right now that I can afford it. It hurts me when I go to the grocery store and I can afford it. We're talking about people that are really struggling in our community to put food on the table, on their table to eat, and their kids to eat, and having trouble pay their rent or have been evicted or at risk of eviction. So yes, some people will pay more. Those that are coming in from Vancouver, from Victoria, and spending big money on a big lot and a big house or a place to live might pay a little bit more, an incremental bit more, but that is helping a large portion of our population that need our help, that aren't at this table, that aren't at many other tables where decisions are made. And that's who we're speaking for tonight. So I also want to talk about these 3 options and how I think it was kind of mischaracterized, the long-term unit acquisition model versus short-term flood model versus partnering with nonprofits. To me, the unit long-term acquisition model is partnering with the coalition and with nonprofits to operate these. And I don't think it's going to turn into 300 units overnight, right? It's a small number of units for Comox to be involved and to, put our money where our mouth is and our action where our heart is to help people in our community. We know a lot of these buildings, that these luxury condos that are built, et cetera, it's going to be more appropriate for the developer to give cash in lieu. And then that money will be available to support other nonprofits, coalition members to provide affordable housing in Comox and the Comox Valley. So it's not either or, it's both. And I think we should do both. And I'm very proud to support this motion.
Nicely said. Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Councilor McGowan.
I haven't said anything much on this one because this one is actually a very emotional one for me. It hits very close to home. Being the only person at this table who doesn't own a home and is not in the position to probably ever own one with these prices. I moved back up here 10 years ago, hoping with a 5-year plan to buy a house because that was affordable then. The housing prices are insane, and we have to do everything we possibly can to make it affordable for these people like myself who have lived here for the majority of their life, who love it, who spend their money here. What little of it we actually have, we still spend it here. And I think we deserve, and renters and people on the lower income side who are struggling very hard paycheck to paycheck, budgeting out where they're going to drive. That's the place that this is going to make the biggest difference. And that's the whole point. $1,000 to somebody buying or building $1 million homes is a drop in the bucket, but $1,000 to someone like me is like a month's worth of food. So just perspective there.
Right. And I think to summarize, we're all trying to do the right thing here. Whether it's Councillor Grant, whether it's Councillor Bissinger, we're all trying to put money towards this affordable housing. We're just looking at what vehicle is the right way. I know for myself, I've spoke to Coalition. I spoke to Angela, who was on earlier. I've spoke to the Habitat for Humanity. I personally think that that avenue is the best way to go. But we're all looking at the same thing, is providing some assistance where we can to those who are trying to get into the housing market or to try to get into a rental. And so I think, you know, for those who are watching, if there's anybody, we're all trying to do the right thing here. We're trying to move it in different directions, but it's ultimately going to go to those who need it. So I just want to say that, Councillor Bissinger.
Sure, thanks. And I appreciate that we're talking about the different models, and now we're actually, what we're talking about right now is a bit different than what we voted on last time. And if there is such a strong appetite to partner with the coalition, like I know we've tried to do a vote last year, to actually join the coalition through the tax requisition. But, if that's an avenue that council seems to want to take, like I'd be open to revisit that for sure. Like I think the long-term acquisition made sense to me, but if they're saying $1 brings $19, then, maybe that is eye-opening to me. And that is something that we could look at again. Like, I'm not opposed to that, but I think, in terms of getting the funds that we can then choose to either purchase units to manage with a nonprofit such as the coalition, or to give money to the coalition. Right now, we're talking about, what amount of money we are getting from development and how we're funding that fund for housing. So I think, it's two different things. And I know, and like I said, if we want to talk about number one again, I would totally have a discussion, because maybe we didn't have all the information that we needed, or maybe we need to have a tax requisition for the coalition and leave it there, and that's where all the money goes, or I don't know what, there's no right decision right now. But I think, what we're trying to do right now is just figure out how much money we're actually going to be able to put in this fund. And I think there's a huge difference between, collecting no money from single lots to collecting 3,000 or 4,000. And, I'm open to negotiations. I think 4,000 seems fair. Like, Councillor McGowan was saying, an extra $1,000 is a drop in the bucket. It's just like, oh, oops, I ordered the wrong doors, I'm going to send those back. Oh, I lost $1,000. When you're building a house, it's not a big thing in the grand scheme of things. So I think that's, we got to come back to that idea. We're just looking at how we're acquiring those funds to do the right thing afterwards.
Right. So we have a motion. Okay, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so that was my question too, because this is just talking about how much we're going to collect. It doesn't actually talk about where we're going to put it. So if we wanted to do that, we'd have to reopen that discussion probably at another meeting, I would guess. But I guess I'm having a hard time with this, because the motion we had before was quite different than this. I don't know what the difference between a 1.6% unit count is. Like, I can get my head around $3,000 a lot, or 4,000. I know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know what this equates to and what happens if you bump it up to 2.5. I don't know the difference.
CAO.
Yeah, I'm just looking,
Okay.
and the report, page 60 would be a good place to go on the agenda. So 1.6% of total units would have given you 3.71 units and a total value of 1.1 million from 695 Aspen. 2.5 units would give you 2.5% would give you 5.8 units, and would have resulted in a 1.7 million. So we collected 1.2% at 831,000. The staff recommendation was 1.6, which is 1.1 million, and the motion on the floor is 2.5%, which is 1.7 million. So you would have doubled. Yeah, the 695 Aspen contribution would have been just over doubled. Yeah,
12 units.
Now those 12 units are the 6 units that we got were a third funded from mortgage and a third funded from grant as well. So they weren't, we didn't get those freehold. Yeah. And what we're talking about here is 2.5% of a unit free and clear.
No, I don't, Jordan, sorry, I don't see a double. I just see we went from 3.7 units to 5.8. So we would have had an additional 2. units if we went from what the 1.6 currently is to the 2.5?
So I was speaking that what we actually got from 695 Aspen was 1.2%, the 831, correct, Marvin? It was 1% plus the 15 uplift, which we calculated to be 0.2, correct? Okay. So, but roughly speaking, for our purposes, what we got out of 695 Aspen was about 830,000. What we would have got if we were at the 1.6, which was the staff recommendation, would have been 1.1 million. And what we would get under the motion on the floor at 2.5% is 1.7 million. So the staff recommendation is more. Does that make sense, Councilor Minister? That what was this?
So staff recommendation is basically the delta between 1.1 million to 830. So with the staff recommendation, we would have gotten like $300,000 more than what we did get.
Correct.
Basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Kerr, just a question, because I think it's apples and orange discussion here is, if we use the market value of the units at Aspen, then it would be much closer. And because we're talking about price paid by the town, but that was reduced rate. So the 2.5% would actually be 6 units at market rate.
The 2.5% would not be 6. Yeah, it would be 5.8 units
at market rate. So the Aspen calculation, that looks a little underreported because we got such a good deal on those units. But using market rates, the 2.5% is equal to Aspen.
I hear what you're saying, but this table has normalized all of that. So the comparison you can use on these numbers are normalized, so you don't have to do that adjustment between the different percentages.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Grant, did you have your hand up?
I guess we're using Aspen as our gauge, and Aspen is the biggest project we've ever done in our history. What does it do to a 20 unit or a 30 unit or a 50 unit building? Because that's more the norm of what we're going to be getting. If you do something downtown here, for example, and they want, I think they're looking at 56 units. I talked to the guys on this pretty extensively, and they were okay with the recommendation we had. I don't think they're going to be super thrilled with the new one, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the implications are of that on a smaller building.
So the percentages would scale. The amount you get on a lower number of units would be a lower amount. Now, larger developments have larger margins, which allow them to be able to take on more. And this is where council is going to have to decide the level of risk that you want to move forward with one way or another. You're risking leaving money on the table for developments and not getting the maximum amount of affordable housing contributions by going under, and you're risking pushing development out of the market if you make it unaffordable, if you go over. And this is where I kind of go back to what I was saying before. I unfortunately don't have any more advice to give council than we have already. This is a decision that's going to have to be made around the table. Now, you could maybe ask us to go out and we could find an expert in this area to do a market sounding, to do an analysis, to suggest what numbers the market could hold. That's maybe the only other option you could maybe go at this point, other than choosing where you want to be.
I'm going to go with Councillor Minions and then Bissinger.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm looking at it the right way, but is it just not for every 40 units we get one? So like 56 would be 1.4. Is it 2.5% just means for every 40 in a building, it's 1? Is that not right?
Trust your math on that. That sounds about right.
Some simple math.
But because it's percentages, it doesn't matter how many units are coming, right? It'll just scale down. So we're not anticipating in most developments we're actually going to get those units. We're going to get the cash contribution equal to the value of the units. So that sounds right what you just said. Yes.
And in that theory, when we get cash contributions, we're not managing that household. It goes into into affordable housing fund at that point.
If we could do something like we did in 695 Aspen, where we actually take the units and then we find a nonprofit to manage them for us, or we can take the cash contributions that goes into our affordable housing reserve. And then the town would wait for a development that we thought was appropriate, and then we'd purchase the units at that point. Do one of the two.
Okay, Councillor Bissinger, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just to mention the math, like every 40 units is one. So I guess that development, Guthrie and McDonald would have been like 1.1 units. And then anything that's, 40 or 80, it's not a huge number, especially considering you're probably getting just like the value of what it costs the builder to put in.
Okay, any other further questions or comments on this? Clock's ticking. So we do have that alternative number one, correct? With the numbers that Councilor Bissinger had put in. That's the motion on the floor. That's what we've been discussing. So before I take the vote, and I just want to make sure, we're all trying to do a good thing here. We just may not agree with the vehicle that we're using to get there. So all in favor of number one and opposed. So that's carried. And again, I want to see affordable housing. I'm stressing that because I don't want to come out in the paper that I'm against it, because we're not. I think the coalition is doing a great job. I think Habitat for Humanity is doing a great job, and I'd like to see them get more. But this is fine. We'll stand by this. So
I think we're all trying to do the right thing, but we haven't still addressed, or we previously addressed the vehicle in which we're going to do this.
mhm.
And previously we said that we were going to start the town would own housing, for lack of a better expression. If that was the case. There's been a lot of discussion about revisiting that, but there's no provision to do that here. So how would we go about that?
CIO, what do you think about that?
Maybe the easiest thing to do would be for council to pass a motion to have the previous report on affordable housing funding methods forwarded to the next agenda. Now council, you passed the last motion, which now this means this policy is now in effect. So we're going to have to amend the policy if council wants to go in a different direction. I don't think that's going to be a major issue if it's done sometime in the near future. And by near future, I'd say in the next month or 2 months. But as time goes on and we have triggers within this policy of when these things start to get set, if we start to get development applications that pass those milestones, then it's going to get a little bit confusing. So, well, no, because the amount is steady. How we spend it, it doesn't matter to the developer. So you would have more time to think about it, but it would be useful for council if you want to look at it again to do it sometime in the near future, because just at staff level, we need to figure out what we're doing. And then when people are coming in, we would say, okay, we need the cash contribution, or we're going to be looking to purchase the units in your building, or are we looking to go out to the nonprofit housing groups to receive submissions on what they would like to do. One question, you know what, I'm just going to leave it there.
So could you formulate all that into a motion that I could make?
That the report on affordable housing methods be forwarded to the next council meeting for consideration.
Moved.
For discussion. Councillor Kerr.
Well, I think, however it comes, we're going to be partnering with our nonprofit organizations. Okay, so that is the end result in all of these streams. Whether we acquire units and partner with nonprofits to operate them through the coalition's guidance, or we get cash in lieu, purchase units that the town can control, and then partner with nonprofits to operate. It's the same avenue. So I personally don't think we should have that other discussion and revisit it. What I heard Councillor Bissinger say earlier, congratulations, was do we want to investigate the possibility of joining the regional service around working with the coalition? And that's a separate piece. That's that 40,000 that we were talking about earlier and had a presentation about. Would that just be part of the regional service? And the taxes go through the CVRD rather than us making a separate decision and having the coalition partners presenting at the CVRD and presenting here at Comox. So that's what I heard Councillor Bissinger say, not revisiting the affordable housing unit acquisition model.
CAO.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just split that in half. I just want to talk about the beginning because I just want to make sure we're all clear on the model that we have in the long-term acquisition. So the long-term acquisition is the town would not be managing the provision of the units. We would be partnering with the nonprofits. The difference between the long-term acquisition where we're owning the units and the nonprofit is managing it and then working with the nonprofit groups is an example would be the fire hall, right? So council wanted to redevelop that as a affordable housing. In the policy that you have now, we wouldn't be looking to develop the fire hall, take that down and then partner with the nonprofit to build something on that. We wouldn't be putting the affordable housing contributions as those type of projects. We would be instead putting that money into new construction. Does that make sense? Is everybody on the same page?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So like the $40,000 that was asked of us by Angela,
Correct.
under the current funding model, we have no means to give $40,000.
Under the policy that council just passed, you would not be putting your affordable housing contributions into those type of projects. You would be putting your tax requisition funds into those type of projects.
So it'd be an additional budget item.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's the possibility for hybrids on this too, right? Where and that's where I just want to make sure we're really clear because I don't want to send council down thinking we're doing something and we're doing something different than what you think we are doing. So we can do something that's hybrid where we're doing where we're getting units at some points and then partnering on projects with nonprofits at some point as well. But right now, with the long-term acquisition, the town is going to purchase units in buildings that are being constructed, and we're not doing partnerships on projects where we're looking at things like the fire hall redevelopment or the Park Drive redevelopment and those sorts of things. Does that make sense? My first question would be, does that make sense? The second question would be, is that what council understands the policy to be right now?
So, Bissinger, did you have your hand up? Oh. So we'll go Bissinger, Minions, and then I think Grant.
I don't know. So, so from what I'm hearing, it seems like there's the long-term acquisition, the partnering with the nonprofit. So I know like none of those hybrid models were presented to us as council. So maybe that would be, if we are going to revisit this, that maybe that's what should be presented instead of having the cut and dry one or the other. So it seems like there's appetite for both and maybe there's opportunities for both. Like if there is, a big apartment building going up in Northeast Comox and we want to buy one of those units, but then we also want to give money to Habitat for the old fire hall site and contribute $40,000 to the coalition. Because that's kind of like how and maybe we don't even need a model for this because it seems like we've kind of been operating ad hoc and it seemed to have worked so far because we gave money to Don or whatnot. And it seemed like, I understand why we want to have parameters to work within and policies in place, but I think a hybrid would be an appreciated staff report.
Yeah, and that's easy to do. We can just put into the policy that, we will explore both of these options. Ultimately, it's going to be council decisions whether we're acquiring units or whether you're partnering. And that's just why I wanted to make sure we're on the same page here. Because right now the direction is to move forward solely on the acquisition of units. We can very easily amend the policy to do that kind of hybrid model where, staff are looking at both options. So the motion on the floor, if you're interested in amending the policy to have that type of hybrid, I would suggest you pass the motion on the floor. If you're comfortable with just the long-term acquisition of units, then you can defeat this motion and staff has the direction to go out and do, like I said, where there's still partnership with the nonprofits, but the partnership with the nonprofit is not in construction, it's an operation.
So the motion on the floor is a hybrid model.
The motion on the floor is to bring the policy back for you guys to review to see if you want the hybrid model.
Right. Okay. So any other questions? Were we good? Was there anybody else on that? Councilor Minions? Yeah.
I just had a quick question. So if a builder did the cash in lieu and the fire hall was to be developed, you're saying that couldn't be built by the town of Comox and partnered at that point? Like we can't do projects like that with the cash in lieu?
You can, but the policy that we have as passed right now is not directing us to do that. So we can always demand that the developers just provide us the units. We would just pick and choose which developments to do it in. So if we get the cash in lieu, the policy right now is directing us to save that until we find an appropriate development to make that investment in. And then the hybrid model that you guys are talking about possibly moving to would allow the cash that comes, the cash in lieu that comes, to be used for those other types of development projects, which are partnerships with the group. So I'm starting to see, and I appreciate Marvin for helping me with this. I'm starting to see maybe where there's an understanding of the affordable housing contributions coming in cash in lieu, coming out the same way that we council just donated to donated to Habitat for Humanity through the Coalition to End Homelessness, right? That's not the type of partnership the second model is envisioning. The second model is envisioning getting that big chunk of money and working with a group like Habitat for Humanity on their idea to redevelop the Fire Halls area, or another group to build out 695 Aspen. That's what that partnership idea is, not the yearly contributions to a single unit acquisition.
Yeah, sorry, maybe. And being mindful of time here, and I hate to even say that, but the power is going to go off in 12 minutes. So
we do have till 7:45. I said 7:30 just to keep us rolling.
Oh, did you? Oh, yeah.
You always keep that in your back pocket. My suggestion at this point would be, it sounds like there's desire for conversation. If there is, let's pass this motion, and then council, maybe let's have one-on-one meetings, because I think there's something I'm not explaining it in a way that's being understood, and maybe an opportunity to talk to people one-on-one would help alleviate some of this issue.
So anything further for the vote on this? So do you want to read that motion out again, shall we? Do you even? Okay.
That motion was that,
Yeah.
that staff forward the report on affordable housing contribution methods to the next council meeting for consideration.
Perfect. Okay. So all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
So just maybe I'll sum up. So council, where we are right now is you have adopted affordable housing contribution policy at a requirement for when you're going through upzonings for 2.5% of the units plus $4,000 for single family homes. That policy is in place right now with the long-term acquisition. And what you've asked is to reevaluate the type of methods, which is maybe, I think the discussion was to maybe move to a hybrid in the future, but the amounts to be contributed are now set. And that's what, with that direction, Marvin and myself, as we're meeting with developers, we're going to be telling them that this is what you are going to be expected to contribute in your projects. Depending, again, it depends on when they're hitting that trigger milestone in their development. So please don't expect developments that have already been approved that they're going to be making these contributions. There's a specific trigger point of when that locks in. So,
all right. So we're good with that. So we're moving on now, right? We're away from affordable housing. So we're under new business. Let's leave Love Local to the end. Let's just go through these grants here. So under new business, we have the Bolt Aspen sidewalk grant application.
Second.
Any questions on that? So the CAO and I think we've done this 2 years. So this will be coming up to 2 years. I've done it once before. So this 3 years we've been trying to get this grant money for this, and they keep kind of changing things. So hopefully we'll be successful. So all in favor? All right, that's carried. Joint grant application for the Lazo Greenway.
Second.
Questions or comments, Councillor Swift?
There's a significant typing error, I'm going to suggest, in both grant applications with the amount. So 0 missing in both reports.
that should be 500,000.
And every time that number repeats itself through the report.
Yeah.
So if some editing could occur, that would be great. And yeah, I would just also like to comment that last night at the RD, the grant application was passed for this Lazo Greenway Trail. and the Denman Island Cross Island Trail projects.
Good.
Yeah, to proceed with in support, yeah.
So for B, all in favor? And that's carried, thanks. So for C, that, for the federal one. Okay, any questions? Again, it's 500,000 for C, and all in favor? Okay, and for D, ICBC information protection policy. Yeah, okay, any questions on that? All in favor? So that's carried, and for 2?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? That's carried. So back up to the Love Local.
I think I might be in conflict
Am
because
I-
my business is on that block and I'm also a sponsor of the Love Local. So I think just based on not knowing if I'm in conflict,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a conflict, but I think it could be just based on sponsor, like a founding sponsor of them. So
We'll stick with the Love Local, and then we have that piece that was brought in at the beginning of regarding the zoning. So you're going to recuse yourself because of this? Okay. 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 And a seconder on that? Okay, Councillor Kerr, second for discussion.
I just.
Yep.
Just a comment. In the past, the protocol has been not to talk about or make a decision when a delegation comes at that meeting. So I appreciate their timeline and will support this, but it's probably not the best practice.
Right. And that is the policy. So, yeah. Okay.
Of course, we're not making a decision, we're just getting the staff report, so.
Yeah.
It's
The staff
different.
report, I think is fine. So any other questions on that? So for staff report, all in favor? All right, that's carried. So. And so could you?
Oh, yeah. You're better than
Could you pass me the Blackfin thing that we're talking about? The late item, yeah, okay. Because I'm using the old agenda here that doesn't have it. Do you want to finish off what you're doing first? Well, it's in your head. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is the late item, PR 22-6. This is the license review, liquor primary for the Blackfin staff to be directed to gather the views of residents. So this one, CAO or the planner, so this is the one that would take over for their temporary one that they got under COVID, correct?
Correct.
And so do they still need this if their rezoning application is approved in April, whenever that is?
They're going to have to go through a separate, the timelines within the Liquor Control Board are questionable, which is why they're running these two processes.
Okay. All right.
So, once that's all completed, this will be redundant, but the need is to make sure that they can do that provision in June. And just given the processing delays that are happening everywhere at the province.
So it's no real change. It's just allowing them to carry on, but different authority of it through.
Correct. It's a permanent change that would allow them to operate the patio. So let's say this one went through, but the rezoning didn't, it would allow them to operate the patio.
Right. Okay. So is everybody comfortable with that? And so we have the motion that staff be directed to gather views. So do we have a mover and seconder on it? I don't think we did.
Second.
Okay. So for any further discussion, all in favor? And that's carried. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Shelley. All right, so that takes us right through to to reports from members of council. So we'll go with Councillor McGowan and clockwise.
Not too busy of a week or two. I attended a sewage commission meeting that was majority in camera, if I remember correctly. Now. and the North Island College warm up to housing event, which looks like it's going to be very cool to have that cluster of housing up at North Island College.
Okay, thanks.
Also not a super busy couple weeks, but attended the Ukraine rally, and thanks to your worship Arnaud for doing that and representing Comox. It was a very well attended event, and it's still obviously something we're all thinking about every single day. So I'm glad that happened in our community as far as a rally. I attended an RCMP watch meeting to discuss referrals to the RJ Center as their numbers have been down. It was kind of interesting to sit in their watch meeting for an hour and just, there was 10 local members there and just got to hear about some of the things that are going on. And then I sat in a meeting with Inspector Kerbers just really briefly after, again, with Bruce Curtis from the Restorative Justice, just to talk about distracted drivers and whether that could or couldn't be something that could be looked at as it's in some other communities. New drivers lose their licenses for distracted drivers. So just really looking at getting the numbers back for our RJ Center, which have been drastically down over the last 2 years and really need to get back where they are because it's a really good gem in our 150 volunteers waiting there with their expertise to help defer situations. So again, I've actually referred 2 people over. So if you ever have like neighbor disputes or anything like that, bylaw disputes potentially, there's a lot of opportunity at our Restorative Justice Center. So it was kind of cool to go to the RCMP watch meeting, but that was it.
Councillor Bissinger.
I attended a walk with a couple residents in the Northeast Comox just to go over the development plans. That was basically it.
Okay, Councillor Grant.
Couldn't start it the other way.
No.
That's nice. So I also attended the sewer meeting, which was in camera, so can't talk about that. We also had a water meeting. At the water meeting, we are putting a master plan together for future use of our water system. And it's really, if you look at it carefully, it's really an asset management program to see where we're going, what we're going to need in the future, and what conservation of water can do to help out with costs as we go forward. We had a delegation, so that was that. Then we had the Rec Commission meeting, and at the Rec Commission meeting, we had a group of non-vaccinated people, quite a few of them actually came, and wanting to know why they're not allowed into the facilities and bringing that argument to the table, and also wanting funding back because they've been paying for these things for 2 years and not able to use them. So that was an interesting delegation. We also talked about purchasing vehicles and the zero emission fleet vehicles and the to narrow it down to what it really came down to is that they'll purchase zero emission vehicles when they're functionally usable. So if it's usable, they'll buy them. So that's the move there. Went to the RD. On the RD, we had a delegation from the Anderton Road Therapeutic Garden. So the Anderton Road Nursery, which is just down the street here, is up for sale. And the Therapeutic Garden has a 5-year lease on it. If the property sells, that could really be put in jeopardy. And it's a pretty cool looking place. I had actually never been to it before, but the pictures, it looks like a really nice setup they got there. And they're looking for any solution they can find at all to be able to stay. The owner of the land doesn't want to subdivide a piece off because he's trying to move and get out. He's been a really good, I guess, landlord, not charging them anything for 25 years. So, but they're looking for some way to make that work. So we'll see what happens there. The community grants that we've had at our table is also at the RD, and they are going to be doing a feasibility study to see what can happen at the regional district. They also did fund the three items that we had on our tables that got grant got funded through there. So there was also a transit infrastructure study and look at more grant opportunities. So that's going on. And there was a public hearing set for the Saratoga Speedway and Campsite. If you haven't been following that, it's down at Saratoga Speedway, obviously, and they're looking at rezoning that and putting a big campsite in with it. The Speedway part is grandfathered, so it stays regardless. And there's a lot of different emotion and thoughts as to whether or not that's really what's going on or not. And it's, you know, we're just getting, it's getting to be good theater actually. So, but that should be coming up. When was that? Do you remember? Was that April 27, I think? So yeah, and so that's my report.
Sorry. And then just the last one, the Lazo Greenway application was approved.
Just for Stephanie on the boundary expansion, we were put in a position where we had to make a decision last night, so we did. If you have a problem, now's the time to say so, because we can phone and say we have a problem. So.
Great, thank you. Thank Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. So participated in a walking tour of the Northeast Comox area with the mayor and Councillor Bissinger, about a dozen community members, including the leadership of the local Save Our Forest team. Lots of great questions, discussion about the various options being proposed. So thanks to all those that participated. I attended a climate caucus meeting for elected officials from across BC. It was fascinating hearing the mayors of various towns, including Merritt and others, about how they experienced the floods and disasters, and kind of talking about solutions and what pre-planning could have happened to maybe to help and mitigate the disasters. So that's maybe something for discussion about if we have a similar the disaster relief or disaster planning discussion here in Comox. My favorite meeting in the last couple of weeks was a bike safety tour with a local parent and his 3 kids. Specifically, we went from Rob Road School to their house and we had to cross Anderton on Rob Road, which was super fun on bikes with 3 kids. So yeah, just interesting to just see safety from the eyes of a child. on a bike in a busy time of day. So yeah. And also met with the president of the Downtown BIA, discussing the priorities of the downtown business owners and how they want to continue to work with council. And I know the mayor has been really instrumental working with them over the years. Had a meeting, virtual meeting with Ben Hyman, who's the executive director of the Vancouver Island Regional Library, with respect to, as many of you have probably heard in the media, current labor negotiations that have failed and rolling job actions happening across various communities, including in Campbell River today. So we're probably gonna have some job action here at some point in the next week or two if things don't get resolved. So just a heads up. And a couple more things. Met yesterday with the Coalition to End Homelessness leadership team just to talk about, the approach to affordable housing, to hear their suggestions and concerns, and some of the members were here tonight as well. And finally, really exciting, I was invited by Mayor Baird to Cumberland this morning to attend in an advisory capacity as they're creating a new nonprofit society to work with the ministry on funding a new clinic in Cumberland. So that's part of it, the family physician recruitment process, and really exciting to be there and hear the local engagement to create a clinic, have it funded by the ministry, and make sure that their residents have a family doctor or primary care provider. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do this first in case the power goes off. What I forgot to do, because I didn't have the updated agenda on my tablet and I didn't see page 2. So going back to the license review for the liquor primary, there's a motion that a public hearing in respect of liquor license review be scheduled for April 6th of this year. So move. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, that's great. Thanks. So for myself, I attended regional Zoom with the mayors and Minister Josie Osborne. She's moving on to a new ministry, and so we'll have Nathan Cullen, who will be taking over for Josie Osborne on the municipal posting. So that's good, and he's been around for a while. The Ukrainian rally with Jonathan and Alex, I attended. Is it soft? Save Our Forests and Trees. Yeah, so we did a good walk through the Northeast Comox area where the development is, and had a good talk. I attended Doug Pollard, who's been with the town of Comox for 35 years. He was a carpenter. I attended his actually 2 retirements that he had, and spoke at them. Lunch with Mayor Wells yesterday just to talk about a few things of concern, and met with Holly and Cleo, who were here earlier with Love Local, met with them the other night, and had a meeting yesterday with the Habitat for Humanity. And that is it for me. So nothing further. A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Great, thanks.